Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adam Norman, and I'm the event director for the Charlotte Business Journal. I'd like to welcome you all to Charlotte Inno's third 2021 State of Innovation. Today's conversation will center around employee of the future and returning to work. So if you have any questions for the panel or for Charlotte Inno, please drop those in the chat box on the right side of your screen, and we're going to have a Q&A session after the discussion. Before we dive into the conversation, for anyone unfamiliar with us and what we do, Inno is a part of a growing network of sites. We're committed to covering and connecting local technology, startups, growth, and innovation. Charlotte Inno covers the local ecosystem with daily stories, a twice-weekly newsletter, and quarterly events. So check us out at charlotteinno.com to see what we're all about and sign up for The Beat, which is our twice-a-week newsletter. The Beat is the best way to stay plugged into everything that's impacting the local innovation economy. In it, you'll get the local tech and startup news that you need, analysis you won't find anywhere else, and info on upcoming events. It's the city's best tech and innovation job opportunities and much more. And we do it in a fun and conversational manner. So first, I'd like to thank our sponsors for today's event. Our presenting sponsor is Accenture. Our founding partners are Omni Public and the City of Charlotte. Our supporting sponsors are Dual Boot Partners and Charlotte Business Resources. And our gold partner is Entrepreneurs Organization of Charlotte. So at this time, I want to introduce our first guest, Amy Moser with iSolved, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her company. Amy?
Thank you so much, Adam. Hi, my name is Amy Moser. I'm the Chief People Officer at iSolved. We are a Charlotte-based human capital management company with presence in all 50 states. To tell you a little bit about iSolved, we entered the market way back in 1986 with payroll and time clock solutions, and today we offer a multitude of fully integrated services and solutions for managing the entire employment life cycle. And hold on to your hats here, I'm about to list a few of the things that we're doing today. Talent acquisition, onboarding, offboarding, payroll, benefit enrollment, time, attendance, scheduling, employee collaboration, of course, professional development, recognition, performance management, online learning, corporate social responsibility, and the list goes on and on. One of the most incredible attributes is that no matter what the size of your company might be, whether you've got 10 to 10,000 employees, our incredibly comprehensive and inclusive engagement management, benefit, and people services solution is really right for you. At iSolved, we also drink our own champagne, which is why you're talking to the Chief People Officer today. And that means that we use all of our own HR technology internally, and we've used it to grow our company 50% in the last 18 months, which is incredible, especially during a pandemic. We've got 1,300 employees now in 8 offices across the United States, and we continue to grow at a record pace. You know, if you know anyone looking for a career in human resources or technology, send them to our website. We very likely have a career waiting for them. People really are at the heart of what we do here at iSolved, and we truly believe that when companies prioritize their people, they evolve really from an organization into a true team, and working together, they can accomplish something really, truly remarkable. At iSolved, we also acknowledge and support really the notion that being part of a team includes providing tools and training to help our employees and your employees as a customer reach their highest potential. In addition to being leveraged by our own employees, our technology and services are also delivered directly through our substantial partner network to service more than 5 million employees and over 145,000 employers. And our customers and partners range from, of course, those small businesses to household names that you're likely familiar with, like Burger King, Panera Bread, Bridgestone Tires, Food Liner, and probably more prominently for this group of folks, if you've ever been to a Panther game and you've parked in a parking garage, they're also preferred customers of ours as well. So what exactly are we offering? We've got solutions, support, talent management, workforce management, and engagement management functions nationwide, and with each of those functions rolling up into our intelligently connected human capital management platform that we affectionately call the People Cloud. And our solution seamlessly manages the entire employment journey, from hire to retire. On the employee side, our technology also improves experiences by offering self-service tools that really empower individuals to independently do things like elect benefits, review pay history, view total reward statements, collaborate with their colleagues, and engage online, as well as participate in giving and volunteering opportunities virtually as well. And our platform is designed to support the overall well-being of the employees that use it, which is unique to a platform like ours in human capital. We also have a rare opportunity to use a modern experience that's inclusive for all within our own enterprise and for that of our customers. Now, I know that's a lot of information. However, I'll leave you with just a couple things to remember. iSolve People Cloud provides a modern employee experience, and we prepare organizations for the future of work. We've been enabling companies to enable their employees for decades now. And our promise is to continue to future-proof our platform so that we can support our customers through all that life and work might throw at us in the future, both those big challenges and small. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share iSolved with all of you. And at this time, I'll hand it back over to Adam.
Thanks, Amy. You guys have a lot of awesome stuff going on at iSolved. Appreciate you joining us today. Next up, I want to welcome Mike Yinger. Mike is the CEO for Resume Civ. Mike?
Thanks, Adam and Amy. Tough act to follow, but it was a pleasure to hear about your organization as well. I'm Mike Yinger. I'm the CEO of Resume Civ. We're headquartered here in Charlotte and have been in existence since 2020. So startup, and we're in the HR technology space. I've been in the talent acquisition space for about 20 years, mostly on the outsourcing side in technology, in sales, as well as product management. Our focus is improving the recruiting process for whoever's doing the recruitment. Sometimes as a recruiter, if you're thinking about small businesses, even mid-sized businesses, that might be HR, it might be the owner, it might even be the hiring manager. We're looking at helping with the productivity as well as creating consistency. So we have a particular product, which we call the Civ, that has some specific use cases focused on improving productivity and creating consistency in the hiring process. Now, this is something that hasn't happened too recently, but what if you have too many resumes? Certainly last fall, we had too many resumes, and it was difficult to get through them. Or you might have some historical resumes that you want to go back and look at. Or you might be looking internally because you can't find the people that you want from outside your organization. These are all cases that the Civ is architected to resolve. I'll give you a little story as an example. I posted a customer success lead position for free on Indeed and LinkedIn. And in the course of a week, I got 296 resumes. I downloaded those resumes and then from the site, and then I uploaded them into the Civ, and I created the job. I evaluated them by running them through our proprietary engine. That entire time period from downloading to coming up with the 4 people that we ended up interviewing took me 2.5 hours, 296 resumes. It's hard to imagine that you can save that kind of time in any other way other than doing this through some sort of consistent process. So what we're seeing from customers is as much as 70% time savings when they're reviewing the resumes. This leads to a 40% reduction in the time to fill, which leads to as much as a 40% reduction in the cost per hire. All those things are really good. Let me give you a little example. If you've got 3 recruiters and they're closing 30 resumes a month, using the kind of savings that we're seeing coming from the Civ, you can reduce that number to 2 recruiters doing 40 resumes a month each. Same number of resumes roughly, and you've reduced by 1/3 the cost of your recruitment, which in some areas that might be $75,000, $80,000. And I will say, if you can find a recruiter, tough thing to do these days with the scarcity of recruiters. So a lot of benefits that can accrue to the small business. From our perspective, the people who benefit the most from this are the people who are doing the recruiting, because it's taking time away from the administrative side of the work, doing it in a consistent fashion, and allowing them more time to interact whether with the hiring manager or with the candidates themselves. Feel free to contact us. We're on the web at resumeciv.com. You can try out the application, see if it works for you. And I think Adam's going to share my contact information. I'm easily accessible at michael@resumeciv.com. Would love to have you ask us some questions and see if the Civ is a fit for your organization. Adam, back to you.
Thanks, Mike. That's some awesome stuff you talked about as well. Really appreciate you joining us today. So at this time, we'll go ahead and dive into our conversation. I'd like to welcome our moderator today, Deanna Baumgartner. She is the owner and HR consultant at Employers Advantage. Deanna, take it away.
Thank you, Adam. And thank you everyone for joining us today for this discussion about the employee of the future. I'm really looking forward to talking with this panel of experts that we have lined up for today. So as I introduce each panelist, they'll tell us a little bit about themselves and then we'll dig into the discussion. So let's go ahead and meet them now. Our first panelist is Suzanne Baranski, Managing Partner with VACO. Suzanne, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Deanna, and hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having myself and VACO a part of the panel today. For anyone that hasn't heard of VACO before, it's actually the Latin word, it's the root word of vacation for free yourself. And one of our core tenets is outlaws welcome. So we have a very entrepreneurial culture. That's why we're so excited about being a part of Charlotte Inno, because we love entrepreneurs. We help clients solve critical talent problems. So when it comes to startups, sometimes that could be hiring for a critical role that you've never had to hire for before, and there could be blind spots of what does the right talent look like for that role. So we help our clients solve critical problems with talent on a direct hire basis and also on a consulting basis in accounting, finance, technology, and HR.
Great. Thank you, Suzanne. We're really looking forward to having this conversation with you today. Next panelist is Caroline Dudley, Managing Director at Accenture.
Hi, it's great to be here. Thanks, Deanna. Hi, Suzanne. Good to see you again. We are going to have a lot of fun today, and it's good to hopefully get a lot of good questions and discussion in from the attendees here through the chat functionality. I am Caroline Dudley. I've been in Charlotte 21 years, all of those with Accenture. So this is near and dear to my heart, providing the things that I do every day for our clients and for our people around innovation, and being able to bring that together with the communities that I love and my dogs that I love too. So from this, Accenture serves the top Fortune 500 companies, and we do a number of end-to-end both technology and management consulting activities for them. My current role is that I lead recruiting for all of North America, but obviously Charlotte has a special place in my heart. And I'll go off mute because my dog would like to introduce himself too, apparently.
We're happy to have him part of the panel. All right, thank you, Caroline. All right, last but not least, Jay Rollins. He's the CEO of Ethics 360.
Thanks, Deanna. It's good to see you again, and great to be on the panel with Suzanne and Caroline. Ethics 360 is a Charlotte-based technology firm. I'm the founder and CEO. Our mission is to provide a voice to employees that resonates with that. We provide services such as hotline and whistleblower services, as well as the investigative tools that companies need, and most recently, policy management systems that allow organizations to establish, create, and edit and approve policies, distribute them electronically amongst employees to review and take quizzes on, and track all of that progress as well. So thanks, Charlotte Inno, for putting the panel together, and we appreciate having a seat on it.
Great, thanks, Jay. All right, you guys, you ready? Let's go ahead and just jump right in. Caroline, I'm going to start with you. The first question is around actually the topic of our conversation today, the employee of the future. And it's called employee of the future rather than the future of work, because the latter can often get too confused on where the work is being done or where the work will take place, like office or remote. So if we took all of that out of that and we focus simply on what does the employee of the future look like, what does that mean for you?
You know, it's an excellent question, and it's one I think we've all probably had to think about for our own companies and even ourselves through the years. So my dog barking was not a stunt. The air conditioner repair person who's here, you know, that is for me what real life looks like, right? And so as we think about the employee of the future, I think our professional I don't even want to say mask, but our professional veneers that we have been pulled off this past year and a half. We've seen people that are raw. We've seen people that want to bring their whole authentic selves to work. And I think we've seen that the employee of the future is one who's not only going to be grateful to find an employer that does that, but it's going to be one who chooses where they work because of the culture that's there. And can they be themselves? And therefore, can they be most productive? Because one thing that we've all learned over this time is when you are not at your best, when you're not able to be yourself, those are the times when you are not able to bring the most to your clients, to your companies. And so I see that the employee of the future, for me, is about really taking all the individual strengths that people, that humans have there, and how do we as corporations actually use these strengths to fill the evolving and changing needs that we have. So I see a lot of things like doubling down on skills, both skills today, but also proximity skills. I see a lot of things about making sure the culture of companies matches the expectations of the talent that's out there in the market. And I see a lot of learning agility. I see talent who is comfortable and excited about the possibility of continuing to learn as things pivot, evolve, deal with contexts that perhaps we've not had to deal with at this measure before. We're at an incredibly disruptive time, and I think that's going to leave a mark on not only the talent we have today, but the talent that's entering the workforce.
Yeah, I think that's great. So it's the employee of the future is looking for that employer that is also keeping up with what's happening in the marketplace and in the work environment. That's great. Suzanne, for you, what does that employee of the future look like?
So I think I 100% agree with everything that Caroline just mentioned. At Vaco, we're taking a very integrated life model. The only reason I'm in the office today is because I had an event I had to host this morning. But if I were to walk out of this little room I hid away in, there's nobody here. So we're in a very hybrid model now. And I know there's some topics, we'll get to that later. But to me, what the employee of the future means is we look for somebody who has good work ethic. I think the days of someone having to be in front of you with a butt in the seat are over. And if you have to have somebody right in front of you all the time for you to feel comfortable, I think you made a bad hire. That, or maybe you have some control issues, one or the other. But most employees generally want to do well at their job. They don't want to perform poorly. That ties into mental health that we have, that we're talking about later too. I think that a lot of people take pride in their job. So much of their identity is wrapped up in their job. You spend more time at work than you do with your family. And so I think that if you look for work ethic as one and somebody who just has the right kind of attitude, it shouldn't really matter how they're getting their job done as long as they're getting it done.
Yeah, so definitely keeping the focus more on productivity rather than time spent approach. So with that and creating a culture around that, it requires employers to create policies. And so, Jay, I'm going to go to you first on this one, because the hardest thing about creating policies around remote work or hybrid models is that the exact same setup may or may not work for one person that works for another, even if they're in the same role and in the same, level, so to speak. So, do you think that teams and groups within an organization or multiple organizations, do they need to be on the same page? Or do you think hybrid models can be customized for the individual if they do work differently?
Great question. I actually am a big fan and believer of hybrid models, especially when it comes to policy management. And one of the things that we learned quickly during COVID, and quite frankly, it gave us a pivot in development and changed some of the functionality in our solutions that we offer, was what we term Agile policy management. Because historically, organizations would annually review or biannually review policies and go through a multiple approval process and review process, and then distribute them out to employees and give them 30 days to read the policy and take the quiz. It was an elongated process. And if nothing else we learned during COVID is not only what worked yesterday probably won't work today and might not, what works today might not work tomorrow, but what worked this morning might not work this afternoon. So we altered the way our product works to follow a process that we term Agile policy management. And by that, within minutes, you can effectively update, change, approve, edit a policy, distribute it electronically to all employees, and receive attestation back from the employees from their smartphone that they're aware of the new policy and agreed to abide by it. So this was especially important with issues around mask mandates, around office shutdowns, around who could come back. And when you look at our client base in particular, we deal with a lot of very large global and national organizations, brands you would recognize like IKEA, California Pizza Kitchen, Abbott Labs, large organizations that are in a lot of states dealing with a lot of local regulations. And you needed to have systems that were smart enough because employees were scared last year. On top of everything else, there was a lot of fear just in the employee base. Is it safe for me to come back to work? Is my employer going to give me a safe environment? And being able to have that instant communication for our companies to say, here's what's going on, here's our reaction, here's what we're asking you to do in clear, simple English, and then have the employee respond that they understood, made employees feel better, made them feel better about their employer, more loyal to their employer because they knew somebody was looking out for them. They didn't have to show up to work wondering, oh my God, did anybody read the paper today? Did anybody watch the news? What change is happening? So I think that hybrid is a great word to use here. I also think that agility and flexibility are really, really key because the whole basis of policy management in our world changed overnight.
Yeah, definitely. So, speaking of that word hybrid, actually, according to an Accenture survey, 83% of workers prefer a hybrid model. But hybrid really could mean a variety of things. It could be, 50% of the time in the office, 50% of the time out of the office. It could be a couple days a month in the office, or, there's a variety of ways to define hybrid. So I want to dig into that word a little bit more. So Suzanne, can you start us off and give us what you think, like what does hybrid mean to you? And do you feel like there's an ideal ratio around that? What does that look like?
So I probably have an unpopular opinion for a lot of companies. We have a lot of our clients are doing all sorts of different things, and who knows what's going to work? We don't know yet. We are doing an experiment at Vaco where we're going to be hybrid, where we don't have a policy of how often someone has to be in the office. I think that every employee is an individual. They're different, and their life is different. The makeup of their life, their commute. We have some young employees that live in South End. They want to pop into the office to socialize. They can. We've got a great bar and break room. They can hang out after work. But then you have another employee who has kids and a family that lives in Mooresville, and forcing them to be there a certain day time between certain time frames may be challenging for their life with coordinating daycare, especially because any of your employees that have kids now, daycares are opening, closing. It's challenging just with the things that are going on with the Delta variant. So I think for us, when I said integrated life earlier, for us, what that means is, we want to do life with our employees, with whatever they're going through and whatever works for them. And we view our office as a landing hub where they can come in as they want to. If they have a client meeting in town, they can pop in if they need to take a video call after and then go home later. And then there's very few people that want to be 100% remote. There's also, I don't think anyone that wants to be in 5 days a week either. So we're just accommodating to a hybrid, and we're leaving it up team by team because the teams all have a unique dynamic too in the way that they like to work together. So they can decide that amongst themselves and what works for them. But I think as far as how we're going to handle it, From an office-wide perspective is probably have a quarterly office outing, whether it's at the Whitewater Center or, you know, doing something fun together to get the whole group together. And then we have office-wide virtual meetings every 2 weeks that are branch meetings that we have. So we're still all talking and together regularly. We're still very, very connected, even though we're not physically at our desk every single day anymore.
Yeah, it sounds like you're already preparing for the employee of the future. So that's great. Caroline, what does that look like for you? What does hybrid mean to you in this situation?
Yeah, Suzanne did a nice job of articulating it, and you know, we really think about it as a personalized approach. There are obviously safety standards. We operate in over 40 cities in North America, and so, you know, we're constantly, you know, as Jay pointed out, you know, there's different regulations, policies, et cetera, that are happening in local governments, you know, across the board. And so we have teams that are, you know, truly working at it. And I think the most important thing to incorporate as you're making those standards for yourself for what hybrid means is the voice of your people, right? So the voice of your clients is very important if you're professional services organizations and working with them, but also the voice of your people so that they can help to inform those choices. One thing that we find is incredibly important, whether it's you know, the HR solutions that we're delivering for our clients or whether we're doing it for ourselves, is making sure that in addition to using the voices of our people, that we ensure that it's the voices of everybody. We find that the solutions we come up with, whether they're hybrid or, you know, otherwise, other decisions we're making that impact them, when we have the voices of our people and making sure that the people at the table and the voices at the table are diverse, leads to a better outcome. So for us, we find, you know, it absolutely holds true, some of the research that shows that you're 600% more innovative on these things when you incorporate and have a culture of equality where people feel okay to speak up. Because as Suzanne mentioned, you know, there is a new level of needs that people have, and historically it's been a little bit taboo to be honest about those and to really be authentic about what those needs are. And so what's incredibly important for us is that culture of equality where people feel comfortable speaking up and bringing those to the table, so we can design what hybrid means for each of our communities and roles, because some are client facing and we need to be a little bit different, but some might not need to be. So that's the one thing I'd articulate for, is just making sure all voices are brought to the table so that it's designed well.
Yeah.
Deanna, one other thing that to tag on to that, we're not as large as Vaco or obviously as Accenture, but it became quickly apparent to us after shutdown that we were not going to be able to safely reopen in the same location, that we had grown very, very fast. We were a company that had multiple consecutive years of 100% growth. And so there were offices that were originally designed for one person that had 2 people in it, 3 people in it, where we were crawling on top of each other. And so that day in March when everybody go take your computer, grab your stuff, don't leave any food in the refrigerator, we'll see you when we see you. Once that day happened.
It's going to be 2 weeks, right? Just 2 weeks.
Yeah, just give me a couple days, no big deal.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Yeah, our exec team got together and said, okay, eventually we're going to unlock the front door. So when employees come back, we want them to be productive, and part of being productive is feeling safe. Nobody's going to feel safe coming back into this environment as a physical location. So we relocated. And by the way, last summer was a fantastic time to find real estate, and great. There was a lot of empty space and easy to get. But we tripled our square footage, and we also had a landlord who understood. So we did little things like upfitted the air handling unit to recycle the air every 5 minutes, to make sure that everybody's seat location was socially distanced, all of those kind of things. Because we knew when people came back, whether they came back full-time, part-time, hybrid, none of that was set in stone yet in August last year, right? You didn't know what was going on. We wanted to make sure that no matter what happened, our job as an employer was not going to impact somebody's decision on what they had to do. And then when we came back, we quite frankly had some employees who said, I really want to come back to the office. I felt isolated working at home. The same type of mental health issues entered isolationism. And so we had some employees who said, especially younger employees, single employees, I appreciate the social aspect of being here, of having people I see every day, having someone to eat with, and not eat all my meals alone, sitting in my house, to be able to socialize. And we have some that come back now part-time, 1 or 2 days a week as needed for meetings and getting together. And we also deal with a lot of highly confidential client information, dealing especially with issues of fraud, financial malfeasance, and things like that. So we have some employees that needed to be in a highly secure environment as well. So we're all over the board, in some employees that are still full-time work from home, some that are part-time in and out of the office, some that are full-time back in the office.
Yeah. So when you're looking at that mix of people, remote, hybrid, or in the office, are you finding that there are elements of work that are best done in an office setting? Is there some that's best done remotely? What does that look like for you, Jay, since you mentioned you've got a group that's doing both?
I think for us, what really drive it is what's required. For example, if you're working with a client, a major financial institution, on an issue of fraud or financial malfeasance with their CFO, you can't do that at the kitchen table while you're teaching first grade reading to your stay-at-home kid who's doing virtual learning. It's just not, it's not safe, it's not appropriate, and we'd violate every security principle on the planet, pretty much. So some of it for us was we had to ask certain employees, what can we do to make you comfortable, because your job requires you to be in a room that has blacked out windows, where there's lights over the door when you have clients on the phone and things of that nature. So some of it was driven by requirement. Our developers, I really think the line in their world was, did you work from home pre-COVID? The only difference we really found at all were there were people who had been remote workers for large portions of their career. COVID, they didn't miss a beat. Everything was perfectly normal to them. I think for employees that it was their very first time working at home, there was a little bit of an adjustment for them. Just as Caroline mentioned, Lappy coming in, there's things to do. And by the way, if I was in the office, I wouldn't be dealing with the air conditioner man or having to run down and start a load of laundry or walk the dog. I didn't have to deal with those things because I was in the office. So I think for some people, there was a little bit of a learning curve on how to work at home that we got through. And I think for some, it was no difference at all.
Yeah.
As long as it wasn't security related, I didn't have a problem with people doing their work at home.
Right. Yeah, it's certainly an adjustment to go from what regardless of what it is. In this case, it may be working in an office 5 days a week. You have your routine. You get up, you go in, you go do your work, you drive home, you have your downtime. And when you're working, living, and being all in the same place, all of a sudden, it's pretty jolting, and it can be hard to adjust. So given that change can be difficult and it can be hard to find that balance in that remote environment, and there is an impact on mental health in that situation, and it is a big topic right now. Suzanne, as a business role in monitoring and being positive to an employee's mental health, can you talk a little bit about how your organization is tackling that for the employee of the future, given that you're in this model where it's really up to each team? And so how are you making sure that people are supported and protected in whichever environment they're working?
That's a great question. And one thing I didn't mention earlier was, Vaco has 40 offices, and so they have left it to local office level on how to do their hybrid integrated life model. So different offices may be trying different approaches, and that ties back to what Caroline had said, that you really need to pay attention to what's going on in your regulatory environment in the state that you're in. We have a lot of support from our corporate office, which is in Nashville. We have a people team there that is 100% there to support all the managing partners around the country with, what to do in their office if certain situations come up, whether it's COVID related or HR related. So we do lean on them a lot, but from a corporate level, mental health has been a huge topic for us. I think we get emails about it once a week across the entire country. We have put in 6 free counseling sessions through our insurance company for mental health that is 100% free and anonymous. Employees have access to it. We also have a crisis line that they can call at any time if they need to talk to a counselor or a therapist about anything they're going through. And we also pay for a Calm subscription for every employee. It's an app, if anyone's ever heard of it. You can listen to some cool sounding voices tell you stories or meditate. So those are just some of the things that we do. And then we also have a VACO Cares initiative where employees can choose if they would like to donate a portion of their paycheck, any amount, to the VACO Cares Fund. And if any employee is going through something, some sort of life crisis, they can apply and put in an application for the VACO Cares Fund, and the VACO Cares Fund will cover whatever they're going through, whether it's, a sick kid or, a family member passing away. It could be anything under the sun. So they're doing a lot for mental health.
That's great. Caroline, for you, can you talk a little bit about how Accenture is tackling this for employees, and also how could a smaller organization apply some of those same support systems for employees' mental health?
Absolutely. The uptick in amount of work we've done for clients to address, engagement, this feeling of safety and security has gone up incredibly high. And I think, there's a couple different ways to go about it that we build in. Some of it from a mental health perspective, is the brilliant basics, right? So absolutely, is there a place to call or to connect to, as Suzanne mentioned, if you're in the midst of a crisis. But there's been a lot of talk about proactively, what do we need to do to make sure that the operating model, everything is set up successfully to prevent getting to that point. So we've had a lot of discussion with both ourselves and other organizations to even do things like look at the forecasts of the work coming in. Are you modeling the right number of people to do the job? Have you been just putting it on people's shoulders, but now that's not sustainable now that they're on this kind of always on mentality? So we've been doing a lot of things proactively to look at ways to prevent burnout, but also in addition, some of the programs that Suzanne has mentioned has been incredibly helpful for our people, and is something that companies of any size can take advantage of. I know there's corporate programs with things like Talkspace and employee assistance, and those are things that are relatively low cost. Thank God for digital transformation, right? It's even gone to the mental and physical healthcare space, and that's made it, democratized access to it. It's not just the expensive, hundreds of dollars an hour counselor that is a possibility here. So I think there's lots of things that you can do to both prevent, to treat, what may be a crisis. But I think, to me, the biggest advice I would give to any of the companies out here, regardless of size, is to make sure you have your brilliant basics right. Are you creating a culture where people feel like you have their back? We call it, the terms we've really doubled down on over this past year and a half have been, how can we make sure all of our employees are feeling seen, safe, connected, and courageous? And so it's those feelings built together that, even just you as a manager, if it's, you have 2 employees, those are things that you can do to have authentic conversations with people. And what you'll find is that's the level of safety and of preventing that angst that comes in a lot of companies. I think we've all read the research that shows 80% of the reason why people leave is because they don't have a supportive supervisor. So in my mind, it absolutely, starts there with the team, and that goes up the chain if you've got, a big enough company to have multiple levels. So I think don't overlook the brilliant basics would be my advice to any of the companies of size here.
Yeah, I think that's great. Go ahead, Suzanne.
I know this isn't quite on topic with what we're talking about today, but it was an epiphany as Caroline was speaking. I think that a lot of companies miss the mark on leadership training for middle level management. And companies invest a lot of money in leadership coaches or trainings for their executives, but really the day in the life, most of your employees are your worker bees, right? And their happiness is determined by that middle level manager and how they're supervising them. And, I know even myself earlier in my career, when I started managing people for the first time, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I didn't have any training on, how to lead a team. I think a lot of people get thrown into it and you figure it out. And, eventually it turns out all right. But I think a lot of companies, don't invest in their middle level management enough and how for them to be effective leaders and how to lead their teams. So I would say that would be an area where Caroline was talking about being connected. That conversation of, how do you make them feel connected, right? How do you make all your arms and legs feel like they have a voice in the organization? And a lot of times that is through their direct supervisor. And I was actually talking with one of our employees about this not long ago, where, we've started doing exercises with, we have employees take the DISC profile when they start, but we weren't really doing anything with it. We'd give it to the manager, be like, here, use this to coach them so you can see their style. But it's a 75-page report and no one would read it, right? And nor were they trained to know how to read it. And so we've taken a step back and said, how can we do a deeper dive and training our middle level management on how to effectively communicate with their teams. And if you do have a small team that, you have a key employee that's important that you don't want to lose, invest the money to do, even if it's a half-day workshop through a local program in Charlotte of having, the team lead and their direct reports take DISC assessments and sit down with a small group that goes through each of their communication style, because you'd be surprised once you do that, one person that you thought was a jerk the whole time, you're like, oh, that's because you're a XYZ on the personality
right.
thing. I get it now. That's just how you communicate. And then you no longer are, assuming anything.
Yeah.
We always assume positive intent. That's one of our core values. So that was just an epiphany I had on what Caroline mentioned.
Now, I think it's important because that is a missed opportunity, because more than likely you were really good at your job and then they're like, oh, Suzanne is so great. Let's move her into this managerial role. And she's so great at her job. She can totally manage this team. And that's usually what happens. And then, you kind of go about your way without the support. But employees are having the majority of their interaction, like you said, with their immediate supervisor that needs that support from training to help employees feel safe and secure and connected.
And so, I think we are asking, just to add to that point super quickly, I think we are asking so much more of our people supervisors and leads now than we ever have, only because, of all those things colliding together. I can't tell you how many, this isn't just me, this is, my network of people outside of this company, they're in conversations where it almost feels like they're a therapist at times, right? People in tears because of certain things going on in their lives. And so equipping them with ways to, one, be resilient themselves, but two, be able to help take that and, then give that feeling of being safe and secure and connected is incredibly important. So Suzanne, I couldn't agree.
Yep.
So making sure that everybody's connected, which is what we've talked about a lot. And as we've all done virtual work and have shifted some to a hybrid model or variations of, what is the one virtual tool that your team could absolutely not live without to stay connected? Jay, we'll start with you.
Teams, period. Microsoft Teams, without any question. There's other tools that we use to communicate with customers, like Zoom and GoToMeeting and all of these other tools. Internally, we live on Teams all day, every day, 100%. Couldn't live without it.
Yeah, it's your virtual water cooler, right?
Absolutely. It's everything.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
It's the virtual water cooler, like you say, it's chat, it's everything all in one.
Yeah. Suzanne, how about for you all?
Teams.
Teams? Oh, you also use Teams? Okay, great. Caroline? What's the one virtual tool you can live without?
Yeah, well, I'll make it 3 for 3. We're on Teams as well all day. But just to throw another wrench in it, like we talk about like the technologies, but I think one thing that is important to hit on, whether it's here or we continue down this road for discussion, is there's this combination of things, right? We've all talked about like digital transformation. Jay, you shared your awesome, product that's out there that helps with productivity. But I think the most important thing that we need to bring together when we think about all these tools is not just dumping a technology in and saying that that's going to get us there. It's that combination of like the human ingenuity and thinking about how are we going to set the right routines, operating models, etc. And that's an over-architected way to say behaviors and interactions. Like, what are we going to do when we think about all these new technologies that are out there to make sure that it's truly productive? And again, it helps the employee to do their job better versus overwhelming them with all these, lights and buzzers and steps we expect them to take. So I think that for all of us, when we think about the technology that's going to help us both, it's got to be this combination of a very human technology. And for all you Teams users, I've been amazed to see, and I'm sure this is similar with other technologies out there, just the rapid innovation that's taken place even on some of our collaboration platforms. This year, every day I'm surprised. I'm like, oh, now I can see 5 people on this today, and look at this classroom setting. So I think that pace of change is going to continue with any of the technology we use, but what's going to be important is the human connection we put around it.
I think you're right, Caroline. I think that, technology ensures that things are going to be repeated, right? But you got to make sure you're repeating the right things. Otherwise, technology just makes really dumb ideas go a lot faster, right? So you have to.
That can be dangerous, as we all know.
You got to have good ideas, and then you've got to automate them to make them consistent and repeatable. So I think that it's a yin and yang of human input and proper technology, because you can have great ideas, and if you don't have supporting technology, people are going to forget them in a day.
Yeah, the other part of that is you can implement a technology, but some of this for me goes back to that middle manager, that if they're not intentional about how it's used with their teams, it's for nothing. So keeping with that, it's a little off topic, but on the same, so with that digital connection and remote work in the home, how do you help your teams maintain a separation and disconnect? I mean, do they feel like if something comes through on Teams, they have to look at it right away? Do you have any policies or standards around how the technology is used during work time or off work time? Suzanne, do you have anything around that at VACO right now?
We don't have a policy. I got some upward feedback though from some folks on my team that if I send them an email at 10 o'clock at night, they feel like they have to respond, even though I tell them they don't have to respond. So the solution is I use delay send now. So I think that just goes back to what we were talking about earlier of, feeling connected and having trust, and, people being comfortable to be able to say that without fear of retribution. So no, we don't, to answer your question, no, we don't have a formal policy on it.
Yeah.
It's funny when you say that, Suzanne. We jokingly on the management team, we call it BC, before COVID, as like a calendar date. And we try to maintain the communication standards we had BC. So for example, that means on the dev team, somebody is on call just like they were 2 years ago. And if something happens at 10 o'clock at night, the on-call person knows it's their turn to be on call. They deal with it and other people ignore it. So we try to keep sort of the same standards that we had BC.
Nice. All right, so we could go on about a lot of this stuff for quite a while. So what I'm going to do is throw out our last question to each of you. Caroline, we'll start with you. So when it comes to the employee of the future, what that looks like, what is the absolute one thing that you would like the audience today to take away?
So there've been a lot of good things discussed in terms of employee of the future. At the risk of repeating ourselves, I think the biggest thing that comes to my mind is authenticity, right? You know, it underlies everything, whether it's the policies you create, whether it's the interactions you have, whether it's allowing people to shine with their individual strengths. You know, what are the things that the employee of the future can do if they're allowed to be and share their authentic self, and, you know, kind of the authentic connections that, you know, they build with their leaders.
That's great. Focusing on that individual. Yeah. All right, Jay, what does that look like? What is one thing you would like the audience to take away from today?
Culture really matters. It's not a buzzword. And I know for a lot of companies in the past, it was a buzzword and a plaque and a poster on the wall, and it wasn't real, it wasn't authentic. So we went through a culture exercise where we asked employees for their input, and if they could summarize what our culture needed to be in one word, to submit that word. And then we were going to go through the list and cull it down and distribute it. There wasn't one we wanted to take off the list. So we changed our culture to BE, and then it has the list: be innovative, be humble, be grateful, be on time, be responsible, be accountable. All of the things that everybody stepped up and said, these are the things we want to be. So we just summarize it. What's your culture? We be. This is what we be. And if you work here, this is what you can expect. This is how you're going to expect it to behave. Clients, this is how we're going to interact with you, how we expect you to interact with us. So I think that more and more, last year we doubled our employee headcount during COVID. Majority of those employees were interviewed remotely, and you're not used to that. You know, you're used to meeting somebody, having an interview, and having to do that really changed how you talked about culture, and because you needed people that not only were competent but also respected culture.
That's great. All right. All right, Suzanne, for you, what would you like the audience to take away?
I think, like Caroline said, I don't want to be too redundant, but one thing that I hear a lot is, you know, young people don't want to work hard anymore. And I really hate that saying, because I don't think it's true. I think they're misunderstood. I think there's an old school mentality around the way that people should work. And I think that what it comes down to is that a lot of people just want to feel empowered and heard and like they have a voice. And I think that if you can give that to your people, they'll run through brick walls for you. So I would challenge people to just stop saying that and change your mindset and realize that they don't work for you, you work for them. Because if you think you're the only one in the room with the best ideas, your company's not going to continue to innovate. And the best ideas are going to come from the people around you. So just get out of the way and let them, you know, it's rising tides move all ships. There's not one wave that's going to move the ship. And one of my mentors told me recently, Susie, if you're ever in a meeting with folks on your team, listen and ask questions. Don't ever say, I think, and start first, because the second you do, you've shut everyone else's ideas down, because they're just going to agree with you because they feel like they have to. So I would say just flipping that script and realizing that people just want to be empowered. And if you believe in them and give them what they need, you will have a great company.
That's great. Well, thank you all very much. That was some great discussion. And so now we're going to move into audience Q&A. And Suzanne, you just mentioned this topic, so I'm going to go to you first. So one of our first questions is, how do you tackle monitoring work ethic with very young or green employees? At times, there's the thought that younger or less experienced hires may need a little more oversight. Can you speak to that?
Sure. So I think it depends on the job function that they're in, but I think it's all about setting expectations from the get-go of, hey, these are the KPIs that you'll be measured on. I don't care how you hit them, just hit them, and they'll find a way to do it. So that's how we manage our, more green employees. We're also very, very intentional to pour a lot of time into our green employees. When we just hired a college grad a few months ago. I was in the office every day with her for 2 weeks, at least training her so we could build a relationship. And then after that, we had standing meetings every Monday for an hour, not to micromanage her, but for her to ask questions and to go through anything. Now those have tapered off, but she knows what's expected of her and what she needs to get done. And, she knows that she's not doing her job if she doesn't have the right results. So I think it's just about setting goals for them and knowing that they're going to be held accountable to those goals.
Right. Yeah. Caroline or Jay, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Just that I agree with what Suzanne said. I was amazed at some of we hired multiple employees last summer right out of college. And I had no idea what to do, and they're some of the strongest employees we have on the team. They take accountability, they take responsibility, and I credit part of it to their senior year in college being virtual, right? They had to grow up really fast in a college environment. It's not like the first time they saw this was after they graduated, right? So I agree. I've been overwhelmed with respect for younger employees, especially those that are right out of school that are coming on board.
That's great. Yeah.
And you definitely have to give them direction. You can't just hire them and say, go.
Yeah.
I do that. I try to mentor them personally as much as I can, the younger ones right out of college, and make sure I talk to them, make sure they understand not just what to do, but why they're doing it, because they're smart. If you teach them why to do something, they'll figure out the how.
Yeah. And there's something I feel pretty, now that AC is kicking back then. There's something I feel pretty strongly about here on that note. We've talked a lot about recent grads and, what do we do when they join? But one of the things that I think we're all accountable for in this community in Charlotte is making sure that we open opportunity up, for many. And so we know that talent is equally distributed, but opportunity isn't. And so for us, one of the things that's been really incredible, and I challenge anyone else to do it, and happy to have discussions or share approaches, but, thinking about, ways to bring people on who might not have, a college degree, who might, if skills are the new currency, and we're looking at strengths and potential and all those things, Jay, you just mentioned about catching on quickly and being an amazing potential. I think that while it does take time to invest in that and make sure that there's the right experience, both from a cultural learning as well as the actual skills to do the job, us as being leaders in Charlotte, and especially in the innovation space, we're in a really unique spot to be able to open up the talent pipeline even further and make a real impact in this community to those who might not come from traditional backgrounds. So we've got incredible partners both from boot camps and community colleges and other programs, even in the community. I'm on the board of our league. There's so many options, and so for us as employers, I think it's important for us to think about non-traditional paths to getting talent, especially in this tightly constrained talent market. So Sarah, you triggered something in me with all these great comments. I wanted to make sure that we got this across as leaders here.
No, that's great. That's great. So we're going to pick 2 more questions and then we'll wrap up here. But since we were on, you talked about Charlotte and the talent pool. How did the pandemic affect Charlotte's talent pool? And are you seeing more or less candidates in the local area. Suzanne, do you want to hit that one?
Sure. So I guess I'll speak to where we are now, since during the pandemic is in the past now. Well, we're still in COVID. God knows when it'll end. But what
2
we're
weeks.
seeing in recruiting is I think that it is more challenging than before COVID to find good people. And we have seen a increased rate of counteroffers and offers getting declined across the board, and all of our clients are experiencing it. We're experiencing it. I just had someone take a counteroffer yesterday, and I have my own philosophy on what I think it is. I don't know if this is right, but I think what it has to do with is before the pandemic, if someone was going to interview for a job, they had to be pretty serious about wanting that job, because you had to sneak away from work, you had to get dressed up, you had to drive across town. You know, it was a production. Now, you're working at home, you can just take a video call. 3 video calls later, you have a job offer. And so I think a lot of people are just shopping to see what, they could get, even if they're not serious about changing jobs. And maybe they are serious about changing jobs, but it's a lot more accessible for them to interview with more companies at the same time because of the ease of interviewing now. And so they have more options. And so it is still a very candidate type market, and employers have, if you like someone, you've got to move quickly. You don't want to make a bad hire though. You still want to be intentional, but you need to move quickly. And also I say most of the time when one of my clients loses out on a candidate, it's because of the company's interviewing style, where they think they're just the one drilling the candidate, and you need to sell the candidate on you as well, because that candidate's also interviewing you, and it's a two-way street. And I think a lot of hiring managers need coaching with that.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
The other we're facing a different challenge, and yes, highly constrained market, especially around technical resources, developers, QA engineers, because the other thing that COVID has done has taught the world how many jobs are remote. So we're competing against hiring companies in New York, San Francisco, Philadelphia, Atlanta, where they're used to paying a higher salary. And so that's putting a unique burden on the Charlotte market, because they'll hire remote developers here and pay them a New York salary because that's what their job is based on. And for us, that makes some of these salaries 30 and 40% higher than what was budgeted to spend in a market like Charlotte. Very tough.
Yeah, it can be tough, but and so the other part of that, like Suzanne was saying, was the employee of the future is the one that is presenting themselves looking for where they want to be. So the employer of the future has to pay attention and make sure that they're presenting to the employee, the candidates, what they have to offer. Like, why would somebody want to work there? So rather than employers typically saying, who are we going to pick from our candidate pool, candidates are saying, which company do I want to go work for? So it's something to keep in mind. All right, so for our last question, Caroline, I'm going to start with you. So this is about returning to the workplace, communication, and how do companies communicate that and maybe help employees feel more safe, whether physically or psychologically, and how do they get the trust of their employees when they might be, maybe they're hearing rumors or news that doesn't coincide with what they want to hear. So how can employers help employees make that transition safely into the workplace and communicate that?
Yeah, you asked about communication, and so I'll start with that point there. I would say making sure that the communications that you do put out are transparent, even if it's not, rainbows and sunshine every day. Share the good, bad, and the ugly, to build that trust up with your employees. I would say the second thing, which many of us have talked about, are the voice of the employees, making sure that that's, a part of it. And if there's some reason why, you can't fully respect the voice of the employee, whether it's something going on, from a city perspective, or if it's something going on with the client work, share that candidly about why, it might not be exactly there. And then The other thing too is we know we can try for personalization, and that's what lands when we think about retaining and making sure we have high engagement with our teams. But you know, make sure that you've thought through your accommodation process when there's, you know, cases and scenarios there, because you might end up in a situation where, you know, you design for you know, for only the needs of your clients, but then you don't end up with anyone who wants to work there because, you know, as Suzanne said, maybe you've, you know, you're just not considering that even your current employees are applying to you as a company as much as others. There's a ton of, you know, news coverage out there about how there's going to be the great job exodus of 2021 as we, you know, start to come out of this, and over 30%, I think it was, of people are looking to make a job switch, you know, so there is going to be, there's going to be talent looking, and as you think about your communications, think about the way that you would want to be communicated to and respect those opinions and build them in.
And surveys have shown that a lot of employees would take less pay for a hybrid model than more pay being in 5 days a week.
Yeah, I think Google just announced maybe yesterday that they were going to be offering differentiated pay, you know, for different work options. So I think that's definitely starting to take hold of the industries.
Yeah. Well, Caroline, Jay, and Suzanne, thank you very much. That was really great discussion. I hope the audience learned a lot. I know I learned a lot, focusing on culture, transparency, and communication, individual employees as individuals, and let's get those middle managers some leadership training, right? All right. Well, thank you all. I'm going to turn it back over to Adam to close us out.
Thank you so much, Deanna, and thank you to Caroline and Suzanne and Jay, and also Amy and Michael who joined us earlier. I really want to really appreciate you guys' help today. Also want to give a special shout out to Accenture, who is our presenting sponsor today, and our other partners and supporters. Without you guys' help, this wouldn't be able to be possible. The last thing I want to mention is make sure you guys stay up to date with Charlotte Inno. You can join our newsletter and check out our website. But that is a wrap for today, and all of you guys have a great rest of your week. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.